Hello, I'm Susan Black. In this episode of Joseph, my colleagues from Brigham Young University, along with scholars from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, will continue to explore the life of the prophet Joseph Smith. We will examine the Kirtland apostasy, the building of communities in Missouri, the Saints' exodus to Illinois, and Joseph's confinement in Liberty Jail, the years 1836 to 1839, on this episode of Joseph. Sawmill represents the growth of industry in Kirtland, Ohio. During the early 1830s, the Lord commanded His people to gather to communities in Ohio and Missouri. By 1836, the Latter-day Saints had completed a temple in Kirtland, but plans for a house of the Lord in Zion were stalled because of the persecution of the Missouri Saints. Here in Kirtland, converts arrived daily and the city grew rapidly. Available acreage for settlement dwindled as property values skyrocketed. Some Latter-day Saints engaged in land speculations. As they did so, Joseph was faced with a problem of those seeking to get rich quick off their fellow converts.
Unlike other religious reformers in antebellum America, Joseph Smith saw no difference between the sacred and the temporal. In fact, as leader of the Latter-day Saints in Kirtland, he sought a way to make sure that his followers had access to capital. As such, he decided as a religious leader to start a bank, a banking society even. Therefore, he invited many prominent church leaders and officials, including Sidney Rigdon himself and many others, to help form and sit on the board as officers of the banking society. The bank only had a limited amount of resources to cover a certain amount of the capital. In other words, the bank was leveraged. The bank only had, for instance, 20% of its assets available to pay out on if there were a run or anything else on the bank.
Kirtland Society had problems. Many people say that was the cause of the apostasy. In reality, it was an excuse. Warren Parrish, according to one account, embezzled as much as $20,000. Well, there's no way that the society could sustain economically because of that. Joseph Smith, when he began to see the problems, withdrew himself from the Kirtland Safety Society and warned the saints they ought to do the same. But who was the biggest loser financially? The prophet Joseph.
Sometime previous to this, I resigned my office in the Kirtland Safety Society, disposed of my interest therein, and withdrew from the institution, being fully aware, after so long an experiment, that no institution of the kind, established upon just and righteous principles for a blessing not only to the church but the whole nation, would be suffered to continue in its operations in such an age of darkness, speculation, and wickedness.
By the spring of 1837, financial troubles racked the Kirtland Safety Society. Money was being lost, and both Latter-day Saints and non-members in the area made a run on the Kirtland Safety Society. By November of 1837, the bank was insolvent and its doors had closed. Of the more than 200 investors in the Kirtland Safety Society, none lost more than Joseph Smith. In fact, as you peruse the financial records, one is struck by Joseph's repeated attempts to try and shore up or save the Kirtland Safety Society.
To the brethren and friends of the Church of the Latter-day Saints, I am disposed to say a word relative to the bills of the Kirtland Safety Society Bank. I hereby warn them to beware of speculators, renegades, and gamblers who are duping the unwary and unsuspecting by palming upon them those bills which are of no worth here. I discountenance and disapprove of any and all such practices. I know them to be detrimental to the best interests of society, as well as to the principles of religion.
There were many reasons for the apostasy in Kirtland, Ohio, the Kirtland Safety Society being just one of them. Latter-day Saints, for a variety of reasons, started to see Joseph Smith as a fallen prophet and made accusations against him. Even trusted associates, including Parley P. Pratt, decided to turn against the prophet for a time.
There were also envyings, lyings, strifes, and divisions which caused much trouble and sorrow. By such spirit also accused, misrepresented, and abused. And at one time I also was overcome by the same spirit in a great measure, and it seemed as if the very powers of darkness which war against the saints were let loose upon me. But the Lord knew my faith, my zeal, my integrity of purpose, and he gave me the victory. I went to Brother Joseph Smith in tears, and with a broken heart and a contrite spirit confessed wherein I had erred in spirit, murmured, or done or said amiss. He frankly forgave me, prayed for me, and blessed me. Thus, by experience, I learned more fully to discern and to contrast the two spirits, and to resist the one, and to cleave to the other.
In the months following the fall of the Kirtland Safety Society, you had a major problem with apostasy. Again, if you were involved in the problem, then you said, well, it's Joseph's fault, and so we need a new leader. A number proposed that David Whitmer be sustained as that new leader. They held a meeting. They made a mistake. They invited Brigham Young to come.
I rose up, and in a plain and forcible manner told them that Joseph was a prophet, and I knew it, and that they might rail and slander him as much as they pleased. They could not destroy the appointment of the prophet of God. They could only destroy their own authority, cut the thread that bound them to the prophet and to God, and sink themselves to hell.
He became such a point of contention that literally Brigham Young had to flee Kirtland for his life, because this man who was defending the prophet now became also a target of attack, and as a result, they seriously were considering killing him. Again, we have a lot of misquotes about the apostasy in Kirtland. I've seen quotes that say half of the church left because of the problems in Kirtland. We actually went through. We took all of the membership. We think the membership in 1838 of Kirtland was 2,000. We actually took the number that left. We think no more than 10-15%. It was not so much of the numbers that left or apostatized from the church, but who left. You take the three witnesses, these men who bore witness of the truthfulness of the Book of Mormon, that they had seen the angel, they had heard the voice of God, they had seen the plates. In addition to that, one member of the First Presidency, this great man, Frederick D. Williams, who had given so much, also becomes disaffected. Of the original Quorum of the 12, a number struggled, but finally 4 were excommunicated from the church. So you can see it was not the number of those who left the church, but who left the church.
A new year dawned upon the church in Kirtland in all the bitterness of the spirit of apostate mobocracy, which continued to rage and grow hotter and hotter until Elder Rigdon and myself were obliged to flee from its deadly influence. On the evening of the 12th of January, about 10 o'clock, we left Kirtland on horseback to escape mob violence, which was about to burst upon us.
As Joseph and Sidney fled for their lives, you can only wonder what must have been going through their minds, thinking about leaving Kirtland, where so many wonderful experiences, including many revelations now in the Doctrine and Covenants, and of course the place where the saints had sacrificed so much to build the house to the Lord. The prophet must have had deep feelings having to leave all that behind, turning his face west towards Missouri.
In the aftermath of the fall of the Kirtland Safety Society, many Latter-day Saints called Joseph Smith